Good evening. Hey, real quick clarification. Our slide was wrong. Ladies, girls' night in is September 30th, so that's not this coming Saturday, but the following one. If you come up this Saturday, you will be alone, and it will be sad. So next Saturday, September 30th, and guys, as we said, we changed yours to Sunday because of Sadie Hawkins' dance, and we wanted to make sure that you would be there dancing with the ladies instead of here with us. It would have been really sad. So we moved it to Sunday, October 8th, so you could do both. And there is no school that Monday, so feel like you can jump in and join us and stay out late past your normal bedtime of 9:25 p.m. Okay, so my name's Zach. I have the privilege of being the pastor here and just hanging out with you guys each week. I'm so excited that you're here and just really pumped to wrap up our series called It Is Well. And I wanted to ask a question kind of as we get going. Just think about this for a second. Have you ever wanted something so bad? Like you just think about the number one Christmas gift that you've always wanted. Think about the number one Christmas gift that you've always wanted. By the way, for you guys, it's weird. This is how I know I'm getting really old, because when I was in high school, the least favorite gift has now become like the favorite gift. Do anyone know what I'm talking about? Socks. See, you knew. You knew. No one wanted socks. Like, I'd be like, oh, good. White Nikes. Right? And now you guys are like, I need the Stance socks. It's got to be the newest ones. So I don't know whatever it is that you want that's like you wanted it so badly, but then you get it, and it's just not that big of a deal anymore. When I was in 7th grade, I really wanted this computer. I wanted this, oh yeah, that. Yeah, I know. It's amazing. I mean, look at that. Look at that incredibly sexy piece of machinery right there. I wanted this computer, and see, the thing was, like, I was nerdy, but I thought this was going to be so cool because I wanted this computer to play a game. And not just any game, my friends. A game called Rise of Nations. I mean, check out the graphics. I needed a high processing computer to play this game called Rise of Nations, which now, like, Clash Royale has better graphics than this, and you just have it on your phone. It's like the same type of game, I think. You kind of raise up an army, and then you go around and battle other armies. And I wanted to play this game, but the computer I had wouldn't handle the processing speed. And so I thought, man, I really need to find a way to get this computer. And so my dad's friend had a computer with the right processing speed, the one in the photo, and I was like, man, I'm going to buy that. And so my dad, in all of his wisdom, said, earn it. And I was like, yeah, I should. So I go out, I mow tons of lawns, I weed whack, I got like $3 per yard. It was horrible. But I went, like, mowed a bunch of lawns, weed whacked, cleaned up yards for months. I buy this computer. I get my fresh copy of Rise of Nations. And I go in, I turn it on and power it up, and I play Rise of Nations 2 times. And then never again. I just, like, I spent all this time and effort getting something I thought would bring me contentment, and it didn't. It just left me restless. And then I spent the whole rest of the time using this computer to do homework. It became a $300 homework machine, because every kid wants to spend $300 on Microsoft Word, right? Like, that's the thing that you want to spend the money on. So why was I over this so fast? I think it's because I got something, realized that when I seek something out so much, if it's not the right thing, then it won't actually bring me contentment or peace. Anyone in the room know who Michael Jordan is? Oh, good. Good. I can still be friends with you. Okay, so Michael Jordan was this basketball player, right? Like a while ago, not too long ago. But he was the best basketball player of all time. And if anyone in the room is going to go, no, LeBron James is the best, but no, shut up. No, go watch some film of Michael Jordan, and then we can have an honest discussion about it. But the point is, Michael Jordan, best basketball player of all time. He won 6 titles. He won 5 MVPs. He has all these accolades and awards. And he gets interviewed in this ESPN magazine. And a couple years ago, he's almost 50 years old now. He's a billionaire. He has a really famous shoe brand, right, Air Jordans. And he is an incredibly famous, powerful, rich human being. And they sit him down and they say, are you content? Are you happy? And he says, absolutely not. He said, I've been trying my whole life to figure out whether I'm happy or not, and I kept trying to chase after these awards in basketball, and they didn't make me happy, and they didn't bring me contentment. Because everything that the world says would be something that is good and should bring you contentment and peace. And Michael Jordan's still restless. I think there's this guy in the Bible that's kind of like that. His name was Paul. And before Paul became a Christian, he went around and persecuted other Christians, right? A lot of us know the story of Paul. If you don't, it's in the book of Acts, and it shows about this guy in Acts 9. Paul was going around killing other Christians for what they believed. He was the guy who had everything at the time that the world would have said would have brought success and contentment. He was rich. He was powerful. He was famous. He was a Pharisee, which means he was really respected in the community. He was very well educated, but he didn't have Jesus. And so he didn't have contentment. And when Jesus changes Paul's story and converts him, and he begins following Jesus, he goes from being a person who was persecuting Christians to being someone who was persecuted. And he gets thrown in this prison. And in this prison, in Acts chapter 16, he starts he's in this cell, and he starts singing. And we read this story in Acts chapter 16. After Paul has been beaten, whipped mercilessly, and thrown in jail, he's singing. Now, that's crazy. It doesn't strike me as something that was something normal to do, but that's where his contentment was. He knew that no matter where he was or what was going on, he was with Jesus so he could be content. And I don't know about you, like that would be hard for me to do. Like if I thought that God was calling me to preach to someone, and then I was beaten and thrown in jail for it, I'd start questioning God a little bit. If I'm honest with myself, maybe you would too. It'd be hard for me to trust in God. As Alexa was just singing, even the fire, I'll trust in you. For me, I'd be like, oh, I don't know. I felt like I was doing the right thing, and now all of a sudden I'm persecuted and whipped, and now I'm in jail, and what do I do? And in Paul's case, he starts praising God. And why would he do that? Well, it's because his soul is secure in Jesus. So even when these storms of life come his way, he has a firm foundation in Christ. 2 years ago, Josh McEwen, who was up here running the game a little while ago, Josh and I went to Romania together. We ran a youth camp in Romania and Europe over the summer. And then after we finished, we went to Rome. So we were in Rome for a couple days. And Rome and Romania are two different places. They're not connected to each other. Rome is not the capital of Romania. That's your free geography lesson for the day. So we're in Rome, Italy, right? And while we're in Rome, we actually went to Paul's prison. The final, he was in prison multiple times, but the final prison that he was thrown into and all he was thrown in prison for, by the way, was just speaking the name of Jesus. And so we went to the final prison before he was executed in Rome. And this is kind of the first part of the prison where it was actually well lit. We actually went down into the cell. We took our Bibles with us. We took little flashlights. And we went into the cell where he wrote Philippians, the book of Philippians. And we opened it up to Philippians 1 and read Philippians 1 and kind of just prayed and thanked God for even the freedom to read the Bible, much less speak about it. And as we're reading Philippians 1, it hit me that Paul, in the midst of his darkest trial, experienced nothing but joy and contentment. And so he knows he's going to be killed. But if we look at Philippians 1, if you have your Bibles and want to turn there, you can. It's in the New Testament. Philippians 1, 19 through 21, it says, "Yes, and I will rejoice. For I know that through your prayers and the help of the Spirit of Jesus Christ, this will turn out for my deliverance, as it is my eager expectation and hope that I will not be at all ashamed, but with full courage. Now as always, Christ will be honored in my body, whether by life or by death." When he says eager expectation will turn out for my deliverance, he doesn't necessarily mean freedom from this particular prison. He just means that no matter what happens to him, he's free. It's my expectation that I'm delivered. If God frees me from this prison, okay. If I die here in this prison, okay. And what he says in verse 21 is incredible to me. He says, "For to me to live is Christ, and to die is gain." In other words, if I'm living on this earth and telling people about Jesus, that's awesome. I get to tell people about Jesus. But if I die, that's okay. That's actually better, because then I get to be with Jesus forever. What do you do to a guy like that? Like the Romans would beat him and flog him and mercilessly taunt him and challenge him, and he was unstoppable because it didn't matter to him whether he lived and died if he was walking with Jesus, because his soul was secure. So it's no wonder that a few chapters later, there's this verse, Philippians 4:13. He says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Some of you guys have heard this verse before, right? It's the most misquoted verse in the entire Bible. It's one of the most quoted and misquoted verses in the whole Bible. Because a lot of people think this verse means that you'll become like an incredible athlete when you grow up. Like, yes, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So I'm going to be an NFL player. And we got this because this NFL quarterback a couple years ago, he wasn't a very good quarterback, but he was a good human. His name's Tim Tebow. And he would always paint his eye black, right, under his eyes. And then on the eye black, he would write Phil 4:13. And so people would see that and be like, see Tim Tebow right there? He knew he can do all things through Christ who strengthens him. And then I can also be an NFL quarterback. And you're like, no, 50-pound child, you cannot be an NFL quarterback. You will die. You're like, see that Tim Tebow guy? He can do all things through Christ. I'm going to be an incredible painter. No, your painting looks like a dog threw up on another dog. Like that's not gonna work. See that guy right there, Tim Tebow? That guy means I'm going to be a professional dancer. You have 3 feet. How is that going to work? Right? I don't know what it is. I don't know how it would be for us, but sometimes we think that we're going to be all these great things. Now, I'm not saying if you think you're going to be a professional painter that your art is garbage. It might be. But I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying that we take this verse and we apply it to that, and it doesn't make sense. Because that's not what Paul's saying. I did this myself. When I was in 8th grade, I wanted to be a famous basketball player. That's all I wanted to be. And I grew up and went to a private school from K through 8th grade. And so I was the only 8th grader on my basketball team. And I was scoring 30 points a game in this little private school league, and I thought I was so good. Now, I had 5th graders on my team who could barely tie their own shoes, but I thought I was so good. And I was playing this little private school league. We played North County, who's right over here. And there would be like a kid from North County. He's like shooting granny shots, and I'm like swatting him. I'm like, get out of here, kid. And I thought I was an NBA player, for sure. And then I go to Paso High. I go to Paso High, and that's a class of 550 students. And I try out for the basketball team my freshman year at Paso High. And I go and suit up for the team. And I'm in the tryout. And my buddy, Derek, he wasn't my friend at the time, but he became my friend and teammate. He's 6'6", super athletic, and he dunks on me in the middle of the first tryout of freshman year. And this is when you're trying to impress the coach and all that. And I'm going up to block his shot. I'm like, I can do all things through Christ, baby. And he's like, boom, down, tiny child. And just, that was it. And I got dunked on. I was like, maybe this verse isn't what I thought it was. I'll go back. And so I went and I looked up the actual context of the verse. And if I look 2 verses behind this, it says, in verse 11, I have in every situation that I am to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. And in every circumstance, I've learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. Then I can do all things through him who strengthens me. So he's not talking about just being an NBA player or having all these talents. He's saying, I can be content no matter what. Because he understands it's not about what's happening with our body, or it's not about what's happening with our emotions. It's about what's happening with our soul. And a couple weeks ago, I defined the soul as that spiritual part of you that God has created that gives you value and purpose. And so the soul is separate from the body. So Paul's soul is focused on Jesus, which makes this a firm foundation. So whether Paul is rich or whether he's poor, his soul stays here. Whether Paul is sick or Paul is healthy, his soul is focused on Jesus. If he's popular or unpopular, his soul is focused on Jesus. If he's in prison or he's free, his soul is focused on Jesus. If he's hurt or he's well, his soul is focused on Jesus. So it doesn't matter when the storms of life start coming and trying to disrupt him. He can be content in all things. And so as we wrap up this series tonight, I want to give you guys this line to kind of hold on to. It can be well with your soul in every circumstance if you're following Jesus. It can be well with your soul in every circumstance if you're looking at Jesus. So this well on stage that kind of looks like a dinosaur egg, and we try to build it around like what a well in the New Testament would look like in the Bible times. Obviously this isn't a real well, but if it was, and it would be filled with water, and I took a stick, and I would start, maybe let's say 10-foot stick even. I start stirring up the water. The water at the top, right, is going to ripple and move and shake. But the water below the stick, is going to stay exactly the same because it's a deep foundation. And that's where our souls are when we're trusting in God. It's this deep, firm foundation that when the storms of this life come, and they will, and try to disrupt us, we can stay secure in Jesus, which makes us content. So there's this guy, he lived about 150 years ago. He has the coolest name I've ever heard. I've already told Alexa our first child will be named this. She doesn't like that. His name was Horatio Spafford, okay? And I think Horatio Spafford Talbert, it would be an amazing name. She disagrees. So it's going to be on you guys, okay? We're all going to promise right now we're naming our future children Horatio Spafford, okay? No, it's a great name. So Horatio lived about 150 years ago. Now, this guy's name is awesome, but he also has a way more awesome story. He was an incredibly successful lawyer, businessman in Chicago. And within the span of a year, he had 5 kids, he had a beautiful wife, and within the span of a year, his youngest son died. He got sick and died. His business burned down in the Chicago fire. And so his wife goes and takes the 4 daughters on an ocean liner ship to go back to England to go get some supplies and see the family. And he had to stay behind to make sure all the business was taken care of and the finances and things like that. But he was planning on taking a ship to meet them a few days later. And as the ship with his wife and 4 daughters is going, a storm hits. And the ship collides with another ship. And it starts sinking. And all 4 of his other children drowned. His wife survives miraculously. She's on a piece of driftwood and found by a sailor barely alive. Saves her, brings her to Wales. She telegrams a wire back to her husband and says, I'm the only one left. What do I do? He gets on a ship, grief-stricken, gets on a ship and starts sailing towards her in Wales. While he's on this ship, he passes by the spot where the ship had sank and his kids had drowned. And he prays. He says, God, I don't know why you did this. I don't know what's happening that this has brought, but I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust you in this. And he starts writing these words. He says, when peace like a river attendeth my way, or when sorrows like sea billows, like a storm, when sea billows roll, whatever my lot, whatever happens to me, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. This guy understood what Paul was trying to tell us in Philippians. That no matter what happens in this life, his soul's secure with Jesus. And he can be content in all things because Christ has given him strength. So for us, we have to ask, can it be well with our soul in every circumstance? For me, I had to ask this question a few years ago. It was the first year I was a teacher at Atascadero Middle School. I was teaching 8th grade history there about 7 years ago. And I had one of the worst months of my life near the end of the school. Span of a month, I was having this argument with a coworker that I didn't think was going to be able to be reconciled. I went through a bad breakup. A family member that is super close to me was struggling with addiction, and it was like ripping my entire family apart. My grandma that I was really close to passed away super suddenly, and with no warning. So I'm sitting in my classroom during my prep period, and I'm just kind of sitting there trying to process this whole thing. And the assistant superintendent at the time walks in and says, hey, you're a first-year teacher. You are on a temporary contract. This is your pink slip. It doesn't look good. You should start applying for other jobs. Due to budget cuts, you'll probably be let go at the end of the year. And so I felt like God had called me to Atascadero. I felt like God had called me to teach and to be there. And so I get in my car and I start driving home. I'm like, God, what are you doing? Like, what is happening? And I'm trying to hold back tears, and I turn on the radio, and this song, It Is Well, comes on. And I had to ask myself in that moment, I could have turned the radio off, but more importantly, I could have turned my heart off to this and been like, no, it is not well. I had to ask it, even if my my body is getting destroyed, if my family members are trying to rip things apart, if money is an issue, if job security is a problem, if a family member has passed away, is it still well with my soul? Am I still here with God? And I had to ask myself, through that circumstance, was it well with my soul? So you guys, you might be going through some incredibly difficult things tonight. You might be struggling through a divorce from your parents, or maybe someone has really wronged you. Maybe someone's been spreading horrible gossip about you and you feel like there's nothing you can do about it. Maybe other people's decisions with drugs or alcohol have harmed you. Maybe it's a lie or a betrayal in your life. And I don't know what it is for you, but God does. And you can make that decision tonight. Is it well with your soul? Is it going to be well when the good things of life come? And they will. And will it still be well with your soul when the bad things and the storms of this life come? Because they will. Can it be well with your soul in every circumstance? Will we, as the church, choose to say that?